Hello, hello. How's it going?
Hey, not too bad. Here to survive to another Friday. How are you
That's
doing?
that's exactly how I feel. It's surviving. That's about it. We've survived the week. My kids are out of school. This is day 3 of summer break already, and survival is the name of the game here. My house is a lot louder, and it's a little harder to get work done. But no one's died yet. We're all surviving. We're good.
Yep, nope. That's today's last day of school for my kids. So getting ready to kick off that madness for the summer. But how was your week? You been keeping busy on the MSP side of things in the
Yeah.
security world?
That's been security world's been busy working some things there and prepping for upcoming conferences. So it's been a blur. There's we're also working on a couple migrations internally. So um, like Monday, Tuesday, I completely forgot what happened those days. They just happened. So, uh, but we gotta talk about the sports and stuff too. We gotta get our weekly sports updates. Not looking good on the NHL or NBA side. None of the teams I'm rooting for are winning. So, NHL, Dallas Stars somehow keep going forward, as well as the Panthers, even though there's no ice you can find in either one of those states. So it doesn't make any sense. And the Timberwolves are down 2 games to the and the Knicks lost in a crazy bucket. If you haven't seen the end of the Knicks Pacers game with the game winner by the Pacers, that was something else. And baseball side, now the Padres are on quite the losing streak here. They got hammered in a 14-0 shutout against the Blue Jays Wednesday. So not looking good on sports on my side. I don't know, how are the Cubs doing, Henry?
Cubs are doing good. They swept the Sox, and they're holding their own right now. We have a couple people that unfortunately went on to the injured list, but yeah, I'm happy with how they're looking. They're still at the top of our division right
It's
now.
good. Well, we have some
All right.
guests today here helping us out. We don't have Robo Matt today, unfortunately. Matt is driving, and we tried it last week, but didn't quite work out. We definitely appreciate the trying. But in place of Robo Matt, we have two fantastic guests. So I think we should bring them on and get them to introduce themselves here. Hey guys.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of getting to know and work with them over the years, and yeah, let's start off with Marnie. It's
Oh,
great
good to see
you.
you too. Thanks for having me.
How are you doing
I'm
today?
good. So first, before I give an intro to myself, since we're on the subject of sports, I wanted to bring up a sport I didn't know was a thing until today, and I feel like this crowd will absolutely love it. It is the first ever meetup of all six Oscar Mayer Wienermobiles for the
Ooh.
first Weenie 500 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You can tell me if I got it wrong. Henry, I wasn't an MSP. I don't pretend to play one on TV. So I might have misread the space wrong, but I was in here long enough to believe that I think you all will appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I saw the news report this morning of them lining them all up down there by the racetrack. So yeah, it's a thing that apparently happens nowadays.
That sounds incredible. I want
Sharon,
everything
how are you
about
doing? Sharon, are you going to go spectate the races for the Wienermobiles this weekend?
I'm not sure. Believe it or not, I'm the most unsporty person you see. I'll watch live streams of games all day long, but the computer
Hey,
kind, unfortunately
esports count.
or fortunately. Yeah, they do. Really?
Absolutely, esports
Have you
count.
watched the Power Excel
Yes,
competitions? Like
those
when
are
they're in
amazing.
Excel and doing, oh my gosh, they're my favorite.
Yeah, every now and then, especially I like the speed running ones that they do as well, where they raise a lot of money for charity. So a big fan of those. Um, Sharon and
Correct.
Marty, do you guys want to give a quick introduction if people don't know who you are? Well, I will say for Marty, you do have, and I hope you talk about it. It's in your title. You have the one tech letter that I do not unsubscribe from in my mailbox. So please tell us about that.
Okay. So that's excellent. That makes me very happy. I'm Marnie Stockman. I was CEO of Lifecycle Insights, which is now a ScalePad company. So I helped MSPs automate and hopefully strategize their QBR process through that. So that's how I landed over in this world. And then I wrote Lead It Like Lasso with my business partner. And now we have a satirical newsletter called Work in Progress. So we write career advice. For folks, think the Onion as your career coach. So I spend my days trying to correct myself and apparently Josh and the other readers, but also learn something about, how to become their best versions.
And Sharon, what?
And I'm Sharon. Oh, sorry. I was about to say I'm Sharon Martin. I'm fairly new to the MSP world. We're about going on 2 years old as an MSP. Before I started Manage Nerds, I was a product architect over at Huntress. So I helped out in the initial building of their EDR product as well as some of the initial work on the Microsoft 365 product. I come from a very cyber background, and by cyber background, I mean government cyber. Spent a long stint working for U.S. Army Cybercom on the offensive side of the house, and just here to work small businesses. So that's all there is
So
to it.
all technical questions go to Sharon.
Yeah, we got a good mix here.
Yeah. This should be
Yeah,
fun.
let's get into our first story here. This one is not so technical, but we do have a little bit of technical stories. This one though, how do you overcome diminishing return from referrals? So if you've been around for a while, and especially if you're a larger MSP, most of our new clients are going to be coming from referrals, especially over the years. But as time goes by, each client referrals start to wane. It's understandable. There's only so many candidates and only so many businesses that want to change MSPs, and only so many they can refer you to. So when you start seeing those diminishing returns, how do you turn those around? How are you able to continue to keep getting those referrals from increasingly larger clients? We'll start with Henry on this one.
Yeah, so I think it's what comes after those easy wins. So there's a lot of those referrals that they're already primed and ready and looking for someone new. And how do you get in and build those relationships with those that uh, may not be looking right now? So I think a large part of it goes back to educating and just being there for when the moment strikes. So maintaining those relationships and providing value without necessarily expecting anything in return, I think is kind of that pathway that leads to that future growth beyond those easy wins.
I have a lot of commentary on this one because I figured when we weren't technical, I should go ahead and put in my 2 cents because I will not be worth a penny at some place. So first, I think asking questions, right? And I did talk to a lot of MSPs around quarterly business reviews, which is where you often ask for this referral, right? So you need to start asking them questions to get them thinking outside their own box, because a lot of people are only thinking of their immediate contacts. And one of the phrases, there are two phrases that I always like to use when I was trying to hint to someone about where I wanted them to take a conversation. So some of the larger clients that we work with have similar problems. Have you seen this with any of your friends that work in, name the companies you want them to talk to you about, or say types of verticals, etc., right? You can plant the seed. They're not thinking that way because people don't think big necessarily. So you can plant that seed. The other thing that I would say is what we're seeing in enterprise, right? So like we work in these larger spaces already. We're not asking you to give us a leg up in a way that you didn't expect. So I think you have to show them that you're ready for getting those larger accounts. I think asking them always what is a good partner for them, and what are there some larger companies you would love to work for? Maybe we have connections there. And lastly, how about looking at the employees of that partner and see if they've worked for any of the companies, because a lot of times they will have trickled down maybe to a smaller shop and maybe they've got an in for you. I don't know if any of that's helpful, but that's kind of what came to mind.
Sharon, do you have anything you want to add?
I gotta say, when I first read that post, to me, what stood out is I feel like a lot of MSPs who've been around for a while, who are used to getting the business from referrals, have fallen into the complacency trap, because it is. Hey, I've been getting things like this. Okay,
Aren't
I'm
you
not going
still
to push
giving
on
me that
social
for
media.
free?
I'm not going to bother doing paid marketing. I'm not going to get out and boots on the ground like I did when I first started my MSP. They've niched themselves because their clients are all a certain size, they're all in a certain industry, and now they're expecting the clients to introduce them to someone outside their industry. Guess what? That's not going to happen. That's not the group they run into. You can't depend only on referrals as your source of business. It's a great source of business. It's my favorite source of business. I think it is everyone. But don't get complacent, or your MSP is just going to stagnate. And so my advice is to take a look at the companies that you want to be your customers and find out, who do they hang out with? What events are they at? Are they Chamber of Commerce members? Are they BNI members? Is there some kind of networking organization for that industry niche that you should start showing up at? How often are you showing up at events where those businesses are? And what are you doing to build a relationship with the people in those businesses. You definitely should be looking through your LinkedIn contacts. Does anybody you know somebody at that business? Can you directly ask for an introduction? Well, you should. Can you start sending them cards, cookies in the mail for the people you want to talk to? Don't stop at referrals. Referrals are amazing. Now you could diversify your referrals program and say, hey, if you refer us a client who brings in X much, we'll give you an additional kind of incentive. I don't know, a month discount off your MSP services or something. So in other words, you incentivize the kind of referrals you want a little bit more, but don't get complacent. That's my advice.
All great advice. The only thing that I want to add to there, and I think Marty kind of talked on it a little bit, is don't just get referrals, give referrals. If you have clients who are like hiring and you have a network of people that you've worked with, if you know somebody that might be a good fit, like, hey, we can recommend this person. Or if they're looking for particular business, like you can refer your clients to each other for the various things that they go with. I think that goes a long way. I mean, if you're also giving referrals, then you have that kind of, all right, well, they gave us one, and now we want to try to help them out. So don't always be, especially with referrals, in the hey, can you get me this referral. Like, give some referrals too. Lead the way on that. I think that goes a long way. But
I mean, as
all
soon
right,
as you ask somebody, like if I said, hey, Josh, what would be a good partner for you? I'd love to send you some referrals. As soon as you say that, you're automatically feeling like, oh gosh, she's like, you want to reciprocate in some way. So I've automatically tricked you into like guiltily feeling like you need to send me one as well.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's that whole ask for a cup of water to build up that rapport and that initial,
Exactly.
Perfect. All right, this will be a fun one for all of us, because I'm sure this happens to all four of us on this, and maybe we're guilty of this too. This particular post in our next story says dealing with MS Teams fatigue, but I want to take this a little bit step further. This person, hey, they have in Teams, they have a huge list of chat containing individuals, groups with 25 team members. So now he has all this list and all these notifications and things like that. But we're going to take this a step further. I know this is especially true for Henry and me, and I'm just going to assume it's true for you two as well. We have email, we have Teams. If you're in communities, we have Discords, we have Slacks, we have Signal, we have messaging groups. We probably get hundreds of notifications an hour on our phone. My unread mailbox is at 0. I have like OCD. It always has to be at 0. If I have unread emails, it bugs me. But how are you guys dealing with that? Like, there is alert fatigue is a thing. Is this something that you guys also deal with, or is it just me? We'll start with Marnie on this one.
So it's interesting. One of the things that we did to help internally with just employee retention, believe it or not, was create our own communication guide and have folks give us their communication guide on how to. So we had systems around what's the proper channel of communication. When I read this Reddit thread, the one note I wrote down was gross. Like that was my overall take on this thread is, ugh, that gives me the heebie-jeebies. So having a system for like, this is how you communicate with me. Because I don't turn on notifications for everything, but I let people know that this is, if you text me, as a matter of fact, one day I was turning off my phone for 2 hours and I had to tell 5 people like, I'm going to be down for 2 hours, so don't check the hospital. I just can't have my phone on me. So part of it is communicating how you want to be communicated with, and funneling that to reduce that. I have other thoughts, but I'll just start with that one and let others go.
Sharon, I'll let you hop in.
Well, we got 2 problems because one, Microsoft Teams makes it very difficult to communicate a lot of the ways that people want to, but 2, the fragmented communications as a whole. In Teams, it's especially anti to what I call organizational knowledge. So any of y'all who are familiar with Slack, you can go back in the history for years. You can see what people are seeing in a chat channel. But in Teams, everybody defaults to, well, okay, let's just DM. Guess what? Only y'all have that chat history. So if you're talking about work-related items, you're planning on a project, that is organizational knowledge that is inaccessible by the rest of your organization, and it's lost. And so if you're going to use Teams as your primary form of communication, you do need to have a communication plan going with Marnie, and the communication plan needs to be you're going to have to create threads in your main channels and have mandated channels for use. As far as the notification overkill, don't get me started. I'm, sitting on, I don't know how many thousand unread emails in my inbox. I think everybody hates it. Me personally, the way I deal with it is obsessive compulsive sorting. I'll go and read a particular sorted mailbox of stuff that's lower importance, maybe once a week. I read my main box constantly. But you've got to niche your communications. And I would argue, avoid being on too many communication channels. Going back to, you tell people how you want to be communicated with. Well, sorry, I'm not on these mediums. These are our mediums of choice, and we stick to it. So then you can at least filter what's there.
100%. Josh, I'm sure you've had to try and curtail a number of alerts and different ways that people are trying to communicate with you.
Yeah, I kind of do a little bit of what Sharon does. I've set up like workflows to where Teams is the primary. So like internally, like to Sharon's point, with that, we have very strict like, hey, these are channels. Every like project has another sub channel, so that way we don't lose that organizational thing. So we try to avoid the side chats. I mean, obviously they happen, or like DMs, whatever you want to call them, but those are just like back and forth, your typical things. But anything involving like the clients and important things, they all happen in the channels, so that way we do have that. Additionally, with the amount of emails and everything that I get, I have all of that set to Teams. So like if it's important, then I have a Power Automate flow where it dings in Teams. So it's like, hey, I know I have to look at this. If it does, like it, so those are the like, you got to go right away. Teams is like the top priority, and then the rest of the email is okay. Well, I'll get to it when I get to it. Sometimes it may take a couple hours, but eventually it will get read. As far as the other things, when it comes to all the communities and stuff, it does get a little bit overwhelming. So making sure that you turn off notifications, to particular things. Like you can't be everywhere all at once, as much as I'd like to be, and want to be accessible. There are settings in each of the different things that you're a part of, to where, hey, just shut these off. They're not you know your phone's going to keep going off. So again, kind of tailoring, like turn on the notifications that are important, like, hey, I need to respond to this right away, or this is the priority community that I want to do, and then everything else is when you can get to it, when you can get to it when you get to it.
I have to laugh at the one comment,
Yeah,
we
no.
don't use Microsoft either, so that does solve the problem. But go on, Henry.
I do like Teams. I'll be a Microsoft defender if used correctly. There is nothing better than Teams.
That's I am very fortunate to have an assistant that helps with all the communication and notifications and so forth. But that Pavlovian response when a notification goes off, taking back control of that is huge. So like I stopped wearing a watch just so I didn't have that constant dinging or visceral reaction every time that something came in. I actually started tracking metrics as well a couple years ago about what the various communications were. So like based on 18 hours awake every day, I get a new phone call every 46 minutes, a new email every 2.4 minutes, and a new text message every 3.84 minutes. So like the whole overflow of communications is part of the world we live in. But as you guys all touched on, taking back that control over those notifications and putting it in your desired forms and on your schedule is paramount.
And then communicate it, right? Like that.
Yes.
He is just, if you communicate it, people will follow whatever rules you give them. And I know you've got to meet clients where they are, but you can get them to where you want them to be.
Yep.
Don't just stay there. Move them.
Absolutely.
Yep. That's the whole owners that started their MSPs that, everyone was used to dealing with you initially. You can retrain them. You can retrain the clients on how to communicate and who they're talking to and so forth. So, yeah.
All right, we'll get into
All
our
right,
new.
let's get
Yeah.
into our.
We'll get into our news story of the week here. Plenty of news going on, but this one definitely seemed interesting for what things could be passed down from this. So, a Georgia judge has ruled that Delta Airlines can proceed with most of its lawsuit against cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike over the July 2024 software update that caused 7,000 flight cancellations and disrupted travel for 1.4 million passengers. Delta alleges gross negligence, claiming even minimal testing could have prevented the faulty update. The judge also agreed that Delta can pursue claims that CrowdStrike improperly accessed its computer systems and allowed a more limited version of the fraud claim to proceed. Delta estimates 550 million in losses, with only 50 million recouped through fuel savings. CrowdStrike disputes the claims, arguing damages should be limited under Georgia law. This one is interesting here because, I mean, about if a Windows update causes like disruption, or any other software causes business disruption, where does the line end on there? And I know in United States you can really sue over almost anything. It's just a matter of whether it stands or not. So, Sharon, what are your do you have any thoughts on this, or kind of what the far-reaching implications can be if this does become a successful lawsuit?
So I think that if it does become a successful lawsuit, it's not something that's necessarily going to be replicated across the industry. And here's why. The week before the CrowdStrike incident, and it was incredibly ironic. I was actually with a group of my old buddies. They're at various government agencies, and we were arguing over various AV products, debating like, oh, which one's better, which EDR is better. And they were all like, yeah, CrowdStrike's actually pretty good. And I was like, no, CrowdStrike's horrible because they're using undocumented APIs in the Windows kernel, and too much of it lives in the kernel. And of course, I was the minority. And then the next week, the great blue screen of death happened. There is a certain responsibility as a software vendor to test your software. And it can be argued from what came out in the evidence and the information from the CrowdStrike incident that they did not test that update before it went out. That is negligence, flat out. It would be a different story if they had proven records showing they tested that update before it went out, that they could come back and see, here's our process, we deployed it to X number of endpoints first, it was fine, we pushed it out. Then they couldn't. But I think because they're arguing on the negligence case, they do have a case.
I think what you said is really important,
up.
is because it's all about the process, right? If you look at ISO and all of the other process-oriented certifications, it is process. If you have followed this, you're covering your tail in a way where you can't always cover your tail for bugs, right? Like things like that happen. So what is your CYA is to have a process and document everything. And thank goodness you had all of those other words to say.
Yeah, I think this brings up a couple different subtopics around the whole supply chain risk and who actually holds the responsibility at the end of the day, whether that's the software vendor, the person that's recommending it, or the internal company that's the end user that's utilizing it. But also, how is cyber insurance and litigation going to look at this and what the implications are there? And then around the precedent that this sets, regardless of whether or not it actually goes all the way through, there's still a lot of definitions in our space that are not well established. And so, like in this case, the whole what is reasonable performance of a cybersecurity product, I think that we're going to see more and more litigation pop up around hammering out what those definitions actually are. Josh, if you have any thoughts on where this might go as far as the case, and
Yeah, I think Sharon really did nail it with the process, right? When you think about, you have as an MSP especially, you have E&O insurance, errors and omissions insurance, and because these things do happen, mistakes and accidents do happen, and unfortunately, some of them are larger than others and can lead to business downtime. But again, going back to, hey, this is our process, and we followed it, and something happened, so it wasn't gross negligence, is an entire different story if hey, we YOLO'd it and rolled the dice and it didn't work out. Not a lot standing in your case. So I can see that side of it, but it's also really scary to our commenters point on, hey, this could open Pandora's box. So if you have any software, or if you're in charge of managing the environment or computers for another business, and something you do causes it to go down, I mean, now it's just a lawsuit waiting to happen. Or you start to blame everything. Like you bring your car in for an oil change, and then you get a flat tire, and you try to blame that on the mechanic. If you're doing routine maintenance, or hey, you fixed a printer, but now something else isn't working, and like this caused me downtime, and it's your fault. Getting into that transactional. I mean, I don't think it'll be get that far, but again, it is one of those things that can set precedents. Like, hey, if you cause any amount of downtime for me, then I'm allowed to sue you for damages. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But I do think that's the important distinction, is have a process in place that you can fall back on. If you do have E&O insurance, work with your insurance provider. They're going to know better than anyone over, hey, what things do I need in place to ensure that I'm covered for this if this does happen?
I would
Thankfully,
also
we're
argue
also
that
starting
from
to
a
see more.
MSP standpoint, we have MSAs,
Mhm.
or should, that cover what is the possible reparations to the client if something bad happens, and there's a limit of liability in there. What was CrowdStrike's limit of liability in their agreement? Was that explicitly covered? And did they actually provide any reparations to clients who were affected?
That's I think we're starting to finally see more MSPs. I don't know about the enterprise world, but MSPs starting to adopt their own shared responsibility matrix. And I'd be curious what that looks like in these CrowdStrike instances with enterprise installations, because to your point, that identifies the process and those risks and obligations that are out there. I also would be curious if this is going to cause some of those organizations to readjust how they're doing their due diligence, because it's no longer just about the product, but what that response looks like should something catastrophic happen. Because it was pretty ugly there for when this first popped down on everyone.
Absolutely. Well, it is like you said, one of those things that, hey, this could happen at any time, and it's pretty scary to think about that. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about in our next story. Am I overly paranoid? How do you deal with all the risks? Well, especially when you get into cybersecurity and you start understanding and protecting about these, more and more you get concerned with client exposure to hackers. Everyone, this person knows a client who were all attacked a couple years ago when the RMM provider was compromised. Um, every day there's all of the phishing, and even with all of the things in place, it could happen. How do you sleep at night knowing that this could happen at any time? Um, let's see. Who we start with? We go around the Marty. Do you? I mean, you're not at the MSP, so do you get to sleep good because you don't have to deal with this, right?
Like a baby. Absolutely, I do. But I do feel for you. And it was interesting because I recently read a book that talked about doctors and malpractice. And it said that regardless of the skill level of the doctor or the incident that they created, the doctors with better bedside manner were less likely to be sued for malpractice. So if you think about that, like that's very interesting. Like you have to have a relationship. And I was wondering, so this is more of a question because I don't have an answer because I do sleep easy for sure. Is in the sales process, I think it's really important to set up the conversation in a way where you could ask the question, would you know what to do during a breach? Or would you like a partner with you so that when it happens, someone could help you? So suddenly it's not I'm protecting you from that, but I'm partnering with you. And we hope together we can avoid that, right? In the same way that an insurance company, you don't get mad at your insurance company when you're in a car accident. Well, you do if they're not going to pay for it. But if you see them as a partner. So I'm just wondering if using language like that, like breaches happen, and would you know how to recover your files? Would you know what to do or who to call? Because we could partner with you if that happens. Is that helpful language? Are you already doing that? Is my head in the sand? Up to you all to tell me.
No, I think that's a great point as far as kind of reframing your role as the MSP in that relationship. Because, like, to your point, if a physician gives you a bad diagnosis, it's not their fault that you have that diagnosis. You should have it regardless of the physician. So, yeah, changing that narrative around it, I think, is a great approach to that. Sharon, you have any thoughts?
I agree that the narrative should be that breaches do happen even with the best protection. But I'll tell you what takes away my sleep at night. It's not actually the worry about a client being breached. It's the worry about me being breached. That's a bigger worry. And that's the thing that keeps me awake at night. Well, how do I fight that? Make yourself your own client. So you should be as secure as the most secure of your clients, and you should be applying the highest level framework that you're applying to your clients. So if you have HIPAA clients, then you should be applying HIPAA protections to yourself as an MSP. But how do I sleep at night? Well, we're pretty small, so 24/7 SOC monitoring service that is not us is essential. That way I can sleep at night because the call will happen and then I just get a pager duty alert. But, you know, besides E&O coverage, it's important to actually carry cyber insurance as an MSP. And I feel like not a lot of MSPs are carrying cyber insurance for themselves, especially the newer ones. They'll just get their general liability and EO insurance. And guess what? The E&O will help if you mess up something for your client. But if you haven't gotten full cyber insurance and your MSP is popped, I mean, you're screwed. Without a doubt. And so making sure that you have the right insurance policies in place, that in your MSA, you're not saying that there's 0% of a breach. You're saying here are the actions that we take if there is a breach, if there is downtime, is also really important.
Yeah, I'll second that. Like to your point, I'm gonna go one step further, and you should be more secure than your most secure client. Like you need to be the most secure. This is one thing that I get really passionate and frankly angry about when I see unfortunately MSPs don't take that seriously, because if a threat actor pops a client, they get access to that client. If a threat actor pops you, they have access to you and all of your clients. So it's like getting access to hundreds of companies or however many you have, right? So we need to take that seriously because we hold a lot more keys to the kingdom than a single client, and it is scary. So you do need to be drinking your own champagne or eating your own dog food, depending on your class level, and having the utmost highest level of security. But going into it also knowing these things happen, and it's not just our industry that we have to talk about. I mean, like Marnie said, with doctors, that you can be the best doctor in the world and things can still happen. It's just life. I mean, you can walk out your front door and get hit on walking, on driving. Like there's risks that we have to take every day, but ultimately we have to live our lives and we have to run our businesses. So there is a certain risk level that you just have to accept in order to go about your day and to run your business. But you can also mitigate those, right? You could wear a seatbelt when you're driving a car. You could not look at your phone and pay attention to your surroundings when you're walking. You can adopt a framework and have a high level of risk mitigation strategies. You can also train for these things doing IR and tabletop exercises. So when they do happen, it's just you're falling back on your training and you know what to do because you have processes, you've done this before, you have these steps you can fall back on, you have the cyber insurance, you have a partner that you can do this together rather than, oh crap, it happened. What do I do?
And I think MSPs in general are decent at looking at risk for their clients, but horrible at looking at it for themselves. There's very few MSPs I've spoken to that actually have like compiled a risk register and gone through that process of what those threats are that are posed to them and how they would mitigate them. I think that's something as an industry we probably need to do a better job on educating and providing resources
So
on.
it's interesting you say that, Henry, because at Lifecycle Insights, one of the things we always recommended when we first got a client was we suggested that they run the assessment on themselves so that they could test their own process and really score themselves first. So yes, that is scary to hear that this is not the time to be the cobbler whose kids have no shoes, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into our next story here. Working at MSP and skills needed. So this person posts, "Hey, I have a family friend that runs a small MSP with 2 to 3 staff members. He is currently around 20 clients and is planning to expand. He doesn't have time to train me directly, but told me, hey, if I feel confident in my skills, he's willing to start giving me some work. Since his MSP is a Microsoft license reseller, he gets cert exams at a discounted rate. He offered to buy me an exam voucher if I'm interested. Specifically, he recommended the Microsoft 365 Administrator certification. His clients include various verticals such as hotels, care facilities with sensitive data, accounting firms, so data protection and reliability are critical. And he also said the key skills needed for MSP work included networking, cloud platform, servers, and general IT. This person passed the CCNA a year ago, but I've forgotten most of the material since I haven't been actively working in it. And they also have a bachelor's in IT and a master's in cybersecurity. So, how are some tips that I can quickly gain the skills needed for this role and start learning confidently? Henry, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I guess personally, I care more about experience than I do about any certifications or schooling. I think that for this particular individual, probably diving back into some CTFs and any way that they can start rebuilding some of that more current and pertinent experience is probably going to be the best thing here. The the education and certifications are great for a baseline, uh, but that experience is what's going to kind of fill that gap of to get them where they need to be, I think.
So, given that, Sharon, how do you get experience if you're not working at a place that does cybersecurity or an MSP?
Actually, a great way to do it, or there are two great ways to do it. One, go find the nonprofits in your area. Offer to volunteer, or sometimes they'll even do minimum wage. It'll be a part-time gig, maybe on the weekends, where you help them out with their IT type things. Number two, um, go actually apply to all the temp agencies in town. Get a temp gig doing IT work. Those can result in full-time gigs in IT, and you've got hands-on experience. Those are the best ways. From there, you could look at something like Hack the Box. At least you've got your hands on keyboard. You're having to learn technical things. That might provide some respect. But if you can offer your work, volunteer and then get a reference, or you can work for a temp agency and get some skills. That's the quickest way, I think, to level up.
Just to chime in something, because I don't have a ton for this one, in the world, they say we're in the midst of a character revolution, right? In the world of digital AI and everything else, it's your character skills that are going to win over technical skills. So and those character skills, I don't just mean being friendly to clients. I mean, putting in the work and learning, right? So you dip your toe in the water, start somewhere, but then actively chase down, don't expect someone else to hand it to you. Google is not broken at your house. Get on YouTube, just start learning somewhere, and grow from that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. So Home Lab is another thing that I recommend is, you can go on eBay, you can get some cheap equipment and just, the best way to learn is just start breaking shit, right? So if you have it in your Home Lab and you break it, you learn how to put it back together. But to Marty's point, and I'm glad you brought that up because this is something I stress all of the time, is you are posting
in the MSP channel, the managed service provider, and all you're talking about is tech skills, and that is one part of the job. We're providing a service. So if you can learn how to do those soft skills, how you can do project management, how you can do all of the service skills and be able to figure it out. And hey, I don't know how to do this, but I know how to utilize my resources, whether that's Google, whether it's Chat GPT, whether it's, some sort of escalation or working with the vendor. Like, I will figure out the answer. But in the meantime, I'm also going to be able to be transparent, set expectations, work with the customer, rely on my other experiences. If you don't have IT, I'm sure you've worked elsewhere. Those skills are directly transferable. Shameless plug to the talk I'm about to give at IT Nation Secure, where I'm literally talking about how you can hire and take restaurant skills and apply them to the MSP. So there, you have those skills. Everyone has those skills that you've gathered at other various jobs that you've had. So figure out how they apply and and get it done. So yeah, put the work in, do some home labs. I mean, certifications is just one small part of what is going to be needed to you at an MSP. I mean, really, it's you're doing so much and juggling all of the tickets. There is a lot more soft skills that are needed rather than the technical skills.
I would add that check out the communities that are out there in the industry, because there are a lot of people willing to share their knowledge and experience with you and include you in different working groups and projects if you show the initiative. There's a lot of great free resources out there. I know going to some of the events in our industry, there's an individual that was at one this spring, not in our industry, just happened to be in the area and wanted to know what MSPs did and was involved in IT, but kind of clicked for them of like, oh, I could go and be involved in cybersecurity in your industry. So they showed up for the event, registered, and showed that initiative. I think there's a lot to be said to the point about soft skills. Having that demonstrated is way more important than some of the knowledge out there, for sure.
Yeah, and funnily enough, that leads into our last story we're talking about. This person's asking the kind of the exact opposite is, hey, do most MSPs de-emphasize the actual IT part? Reading through a lot of posts on the sub and elsewhere, it feels like the majority of MSP owners make the actual IT part of running their business the last box they check. They're obsessed with growth, increasing MRR, selling new and the new shiny toys, and finally exiting and selling to a larger company seems to overshadow the core aspect of business, understanding IT. Am I traveling in the wrong circles, or is this really the way most MSP owners are? If I wanted to spend all my time on growth, contracts, sales forecast, and taxes, I'd rather be in finance rather than tech. So is this the case with the other people that you run around with?
So my first thought was your core skill in the business might be IT, but your core business is helping your customers be successful. And everyone that works for your company is part of your customer success team. So that's my first plug for team customer success. I mean, you got to have the skills, but that's not going to keep the business running.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think that we are truly in a tech primary industry. We're in a service industry that happens to involve tech, and I think that the MSPs that are focused purely on the tech are going to get left behind and die here in the next few years. It's really about having those business outcome discussions with your clients, and tech is just a vehicle that helps get there.
Yeah, AI is
Sharon, what are
not
your thoughts?
charismatic.
Well, it's true, and I have to say, if they're talking about the MSP owners, if the MSP owner isn't primarily concerned with running the business will fail, and then the techs won't have a job. But let's go back to one of the other underlying things they were saying, which I think I hear common whisperings of people in the tech world. It's like, well, why isn't the MSP automating things internally? Why aren't they focused on adding AI to their technology stack? Why aren't they taking advantage of their tech skills to make the business better? They're too focused on hiring more sales team, or they're too focused on getting more deals closed. And so it's not just that he's saying, hey, why aren't they focused on the technical? He's actually asking, why aren't they playing the long game? Why are they playing the short game? Because the short game is closing those deals. The short game is getting that revenue now. The long game may be automating your own internal processes and even documenting your internal processes such that your MSP is able to scale in the future. And I would say then to that the problem is when you're in the middle of something, it's really hard to plan ahead. When there's constant break fix interrupts, when there's a lot of other things on the plate. But it's important for everyone to keep in mind, and especially when you're a smaller MSP, you have to dedicate time to working on the business, not just in the business. And so working in the business is you're fulfilling tickets for your clients. But how often are you fulfilling tickets for yourself? And how have you built that? That's, a whole nother thing I could go on about for days. But that is a bit of a problem. And it's not just about being technical or more technical. It's very important to remember that if we don't work on building our business processes, that might include some tech automation, that might not, then the business is just going to stagnate.
Yeah, I think this person is probably going to be disappointed too if they move to another industry, because I don't know of another industry where it's all about just the tech or just one particular subject. There's always going to be that bleed over of the primary drive around the business and the solutions that you're solving for. Uh, whether that's healthcare, finance, whatever, that's just the vehicle to help drive those outcomes. So I think this person is just probably going to be disappointed most of their life.
So that said, my son just left being a car mechanic. So he is very much hands-on problem solver, but he really likes to help people as the outcome. And what he didn't like in working in the auto industry was the way the billing was done and how it was all about profit. So he and I talked through about really what he wanted to do. And he wanted to be able to help people, but he liked doing hands-on problem solving, troubleshooting. So he is now an IT support specialist at a public school system. Because why? What is the outcome that you want? Help as many people as possible. Like, it's very easy for him to prioritize, because at no point is the principal coming to him saying, no, we'll make more money if you go fix my printer. And he will say, nope, the teacher missing that's down standing in front of 30 students is more important than your printer. So I totally get what you're saying, Tim. Any business is going to need to prioritize them staying afloat, but he truly now can just prioritize fixing the problems in the order that makes sense, instead of also having this external profit. No, you don't get to fix that because they didn't list it on the problem. We're not approved for that. So he is in a way happier place. I think he would make great MSP fodder. I think he should go work for one, but he is loving what he's doing now.
That's awesome. That's a great transition for him.
Absolutely. Well, that is the
Josh, you got anything else?
I think you guys nailed it. So I will save my thoughts for next time. So we're coming up on time here, so we want to get our plugs in. I'll let Marnie answer that question real quick. Is there going to be an Audible version for your amazing book, Lead It Like Lasso?
Well,
I'm gonna hype it up. It is one of the best business books I've read. Now, I'm a huge Ted Lasso fan, so I might be a little biased, but it's incredible. And I don't know what Marnie's going to say, but I will say that they're also doing a Ted Lasso rewatch where they align each episode to what you can learn from it. So it's even better than Audible. I would highly recommend checking that out. out. A little behind, but I'm playing catch up. But anyway, all yours.
Well, that was awesome. Thank you. And I'm actually super excited. We literally just signed the contract this week of somebody who is going to read Lead It Like Lasso. So we will finally have an Audible. So many MSPs have asked me that. So we will follow me on LinkedIn would be your best bet. Because I'll post there, or follow Lead It Like Lasso on whatever social media channel, or all of them. And you can get notifications 6 times a week from me everywhere, like Roy Kent, here, there, and every effing where. So Audible is coming. Thanks for asking.
Awesome.
That's
All right,
awesome.
Henry, give us the
Josh,
Go ahead.
you should have to do the remainder of the show as Jamie Tart.
I don't have that sweet British accent down, but let's go over to the events here. We got IT Nation Secure coming up the first week of June. Like Roy Kent, Henry and I are literally going to be here, there, and everywhere with that. We have multiple sessions you can find us at. All of I have a breakout session, a panel, another presentation, and I'll be rocking IR games there. Henry, what are you doing? You're at IT Nation Secure.
Everything. I think I've got a dozen different things there that I will be involved in or running. So I'll be around. Find me. I'll get you a drink. And then after that, I will be heading off to London Tech Week again with about 35,000 other people from around the world. And if you're in town for that, please look me up. Happy to get you an invite to a embassy dinner. So, and then Josh, are you going to be at PAX 8
I
Beyond?
will be at PAX 8 Beyond. I'm very excited for that. That is a fantastic event from there, so I'll be rocking that. Are you going to be at the GTIA UK, Henry?
I will. I will be hopping back over to Manchester for the community meeting and Spotlight Awards. They're bringing the Spotlight Awards there for the first time this year. So,
and then, as always, I will plug the IR games. We've talked about it a couple times. You need to do those tabletops. You need to do the training. IR games, you don't need to have any technical knowledge whatsoever. It might help you a little bit, but these are all business decisions. These are things that you have to face. These are hard decisions that businesses have to make in the middle of incidences. So, please come, try to make those decisions. It's a safe place to fail. It'll be stressful, but you'll have fun and you'll learn a ton. Our monthly free game is next Friday. So please check out irgames.ai and sign up. Well, that is all of the upcoming events. Sharon, Marnie, thank you so much for being on. We'll definitely have you guys on again. And for everyone else watching, you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. And hopefully you have an unplugged weekend. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
See you all. Thank you so much.
This has been a broadcast of the MSP Media Network.